The collapse of identity. Rebirth through the Jungian abyss. Do you feel like you are losing everything? That the structures which defined you, the pillars that sustained your identity, have simply crumbled? Maybe no one around you knows. Perhaps you can still smile, go to work, and pretend that everything is fine. But inside, what you feel is the opposite of stability. It's as if the framework of your entire life has collapsed, and all that remains is rubble. The worst part? You don't know where to start rebuilding, or even if starting over is truly possible. If this terrifying sense of free fall sounds familiar, then this message is for you. Not because we will offer easy answers or quick fixes, but because here you will encounter a brutal yet profoundly liberating truth. The collapse may, in fact, be the best event of your entire life. Carl Gustav Jung, one of the giants of 20th century psychology, went through exactly this process. After his intellectual and personal break with Freud, he lost practically everything that had defined him: his reputation, his professional network, his sense of direction, and his standing within the scientific community. He entered a state of psychic chaos so deep that he genuinely questioned whether he was going insane. And yet, it was in that abyss, amidst the ruins of his former self, that he found something he would never have discovered in stability. He found the profound, uncomfortable truth about himself. It was amidst the complete destruction of his professional identity that the foundation for his life's work was born. Jung would call this catastrophic process the death of the ego. And perhaps that is precisely what is happening to you right now. This pain, this emptiness that seems endless, is not just meaningless suffering. It is a sign, a fierce call from your psyche for you to stop living for roles, for expectations, and for the masks you have worn for years. What is dying is not the true you. What is dying is the false version of you, the one that was shaped to please, to be accepted, to function seamlessly within a structure that was never authentically yours. The pain you feel is not a punishment. It is the labor of rebirth. Jung discovered that, in many cases, the collapse is not a failure of the system, but a necessary function of it, an essential stage of purification. He observed that his most transformed patients, those who truly found lasting meaning, inner freedom, and genuine authenticity, only arrived there after everything false in their lives had been torn away. They got there after pain accomplished what comfort would never have had the courage to take, and that is what we are going to talk about. You will understand why the destruction of your old identity is, in fact, a crucial process of purification. You will learn how descending to the very bottom of the well can be the first step to discovering a type of truth that is not found in books, advice, or theories, but only in direct, raw experience with your own unconscious. And above all, you will realize that there is a map, a process that allows you not only to survive the collapse, but to be reborn from it, to be reborn as someone real, someone whole, someone free. You may feel broken right now, but this is not the end. Perhaps for the very first time, it is the true beginning. The necessary death of the ego. Most people believe that suffering is a mistake, a detour, something that must be corrected or avoided as quickly as possible. But Carl Jung saw it differently. For him, psychological collapse was not merely a crisis, it was a rite of passage, an archetypal experience that, at some point, everyone must go through if they want to stop being just a persona and become a complete individual. What Jung called the death of the ego is a total, brutal deconstruction. It is the moment when the persona, the social mask you constructed to fit in, to survive, to meet expectations, cracks and crumbles. Everything you believed you were, your titles, your roles, your beliefs, your social identity, collapses. And no matter how desperately you try to resist, No matter how hard you cling to those old, comfortable structures, nothing works. Why? Because this is not just a rough patch, it is a breaking point, and no one comes out of it the same. You might try to keep pretending that everything is normal, that you just need a vacation. But the mask will eventually shatter, and whatever is hidden behind it, whether it's primal fear, repressed anger, deep resentment, or sheer emptiness, will emerge into the light. This emergence is inevitable. Jung knew that this moment was not the end of the road. It was the entry point to a much deeper journey, the path of encountering the self. But for that to happen, the ego needs to die. The false version of you, built for social acceptance and external validation, needs to be destroyed. This version you have fed for years with careers, relationships, and promises of success must be relinquished. And that is precisely why it hurts so intensely. You are not just losing external things, you are losing what you thought was you. This loss, though agonizing, is a profound liberation. The death of the ego is painful because you have grown accustomed to living with the script, with the role society assigned to you, with the comforting illusion of normality. But it is precisely in this resulting emptiness that you begin to hear, for the very first time, the quiet, persistent voice of what is real within you. Jung compared this process to ancient rituals of death and rebirth. In ancestral cultures, rites of passage required the initiate to traverse the darkness, the unknown, the symbolic underworld, before being allowed to be reborn as someone transformed and integrated. Today, these formal rituals have been forgotten, but the unconscious still demands passage. And when you ignore this inherent call, the collapse comes forcefully to initiate you. The good news is that if you are here listening to this, it is because you still possess the necessary strength, the curiosity, and perhaps the deep-seated knowledge that you can no longer go back to being who you were. What lies ahead of you is not merely a crisis, it is an initiation, a necessary crossing. And no one passes through this gate without confronting what they fear most, their own shadow. The dark spiral and the red book. Few individuals in history had the courage to delve as deeply into their own psyche as Carl Jung. After the break with Freud, Jung entered a dark, chaotic spiral. He lost his mentor, his friend, his status, and his professional security. But the most radical loss was internal, the complete destruction of the intellectual and psychological ideas that had sustained his identity for decades. In the years that followed, Jung entered a state that he vividly described as a confrontation with the unconscious. This was not just a metaphor. He began to experience vivid visions, intense archetypal dreams, and symbols emerging uncontrollably. He genuinely feared he was losing his mind. But instead of fleeing, instead of numbing the pain or denying this plunge into chaos, Jung chose to do the unthinkable. He faced the collapse head-on. Every day he withdrew into a state of deep, sustained reflection. He took pencils, paints, and paper and recorded what emerged from within. Drawings, symbols, mandalas, fragments of images that burst forth from the most hidden recesses of his mind. Jung called this methodology active imagination. He was making direct, intentional contact with the volatile contents of the unconscious, documenting everything with meticulous precision. It was during this terrifying, productive period that his most intimate and enigmatic work, The Red Book, was born, a masterpiece he kept hidden for decades. In The Red Book, he describes his detailed encounters with symbolic figures that represented forgotten, rejected parts of himself. The wise old man, the trickster, the hero, the eternal child, and the shadow. Each figure brought messages, challenges, and painful confrontations. It was as if his psyche had been shattered, and piece by piece, He needed to find, recognize, and integrate everything he had previously rejected. Why does this matter to you today? Because if you are going through a collapse, you are also being confronted with the contents you have avoided your whole life. Old fears, repressed anger, traumas, and inconvenient truths you have hidden even from yourself. Jung showed that these elements are not enemies. They are denied parts of who you are. And as long as you continue to ignore them, they will continue to sabotage your life beneath the surface, driving destructive patterns and relationships. But when you finally face them, when you descend into that inner underworld with courage, something fundamental shifts. You begin to gather the fragments. You begin to stop being just a wounded, reactive ego and become a whole, integrated person. This confrontation is not easy or quick. It demands silence, solitude, and deep listening. Jung spent years in this intense process. It was amid this chaos that he had his greatest, most revolutionary insights, the idea of the self, of archetypes, of the shadow, and the entire framework of individuation. It was there, amidst the despair, that he created the very foundation of analytical psychology. So if you feel an inexplicable pull inward, if you sense a silent call coming from the darkness, perhaps you are ready to stop fleeing, ready to listen, ready to look within and finally confront who you really are. Navigating the collapse, the 3 stages. Not every collapse leads to true transformation. Many people fall and simply never get back up. Others immediately try to rebuild what was there before, hastily restoring the same house on the same rotten foundations. But Jung knew this approach never works. For him, it is not enough to survive the collapse. One must go through a conscious process of reconstruction, a process that does not restore the old, but creates something profoundly new from the ashes. This process is not random. It has a structure. Jung described it experientially in 3 essential stages. You don't just read about this path, you live it. And for many, it becomes the only genuine path to transformation and meaning. Stage 1. The descent into the underworld. This is the moment when you stop resisting the pain and accept the fall. Most people, when faced with loss, immediately attempt to escape. They distract themselves, they numb themselves with consumption, or they chase after immediate, superficial solutions. But the true process begins when you allow the pain to speak. It starts when you consciously sit amidst the rubble, and instead of trying to rebuild, you simply observe. You cry the tears that were held back for years. You listen to the silence. You feel the deep mourning for the life and the version of yourself that has died. This is a phase of profound solitude, of disconnection from the demanding external world. It is like entering a dark cave where there is no easy light, but there is something vital pulsating, waiting to be found. It is in this sacred silence that the unconscious begins to manifest its truths. This stage requires vulnerability, not strength. Stage 2. The confrontation with the shadow. Here, the most difficult material emerges. The deepest wounds, the inconvenient, undeniable truths, and those parts of yourself that you have spent your entire life rejecting. Jung called this the shadow. Everything you don't want to see in yourself, but which, when ignored, takes cunning control of your life from behind the curtains. In this stage, you begin to realize that many of the pains and recurring destructive cycles you have experienced did not come solely from the external world. They came from your choices, your denial, and your unconscious participation in self-sabotaging patterns. It is a harsh realization, but it is also immensely liberating. Why? Because when you recognize the shadow, when you give it a name, it stops dominating you. You stop mindlessly repeating the same mistakes. You stop attracting the same damaging relationship cycles. You begin, for the first time, to take ownership of your entire self. The integration of the shadow is the moment you reclaim your true inner power. Stage 3. The re-emergence of the authentic self. This is the most subtle and powerful moment. It is emphatically not about going back to who you were. That version of you has died. Here you begin to build a new identity, but this time it is not based on external commitments or expectations. Now the self, your deepest essential core, takes center stage. It is your true essence, free from masks and social roles, that begins to guide your steps. You become more selective, more whole, perhaps even more comfortable in solitude, but for the first time, profoundly authentic. The reconstruction does not happen in a hurry. It is slow, it is handcrafted. You use the debris of what was lost as raw, honest material. Every conscious choice you make is an affirmation of a new existence. I will no longer be who they expected me to be. I will be who I was born to be. This entire process is non-linear. You will descend, ascend, fall again, get lost, and find your way many times over. But now you possess awareness, and that changes everything. Awareness transforms suffering into evolution, pain into wisdom, and chaos into enduring meaning. The freedom of total responsibility. What if what you lost was never truly yours? What if these ruins are not a tragedy, but a glorious liberation? Now that everything has collapsed, what still holds you captive? Your job is gone. The relationship is over. The reputation that took years to build was dismantled in days. The comfortable image you held of yourself has utterly crumbled. Nothing seems solid anymore. Yet it is precisely at this point that you find yourself facing the rarest and most dangerous possibility in life: real freedom. Carl Jung warned us that psychological collapse is a radical removal of our chains. It tears down the walls of the invisible prison we call identity. What you called you was, in truth, a collection of silent, unconscious commitments you made to others, to your parents, to culture, to your peers, to society. Commitments that gradually built a version of yourself shaped only to please, to survive, and to belong. And when all of this falls apart, what remains is not nothing. What remains is the clean ground, the open field, the terrifying but magnificent possibility of, for the first time, being who you truly are, without asking for permission. But beware, this freedom comes with no comfortable guarantees. It is wild, it is raw, and it is deeply uncomfortable. Because when all certainties are gone, you find yourself facing a question that no one can answer for you. And now, who do I choose to be? Most people try to rebuild the exact same structure, to recreate the same lifestyle, the same type of relationship, the same social role, as if life were merely a broken project that needs to be quickly restored. But Jung shows us that this is the final deadly trap. The collapse came precisely to show that that structure was based on a fundamental lie. It was not a mistake of fate, it was a correction. If you try to go back to what you were, you will repeat the same cycle, with new colors and new names, but with the exact same inner emptiness. The ruins are not a punishment, they are a release. They are the removal of everything that kept you small and captive. The pain does not come because you lost something valuable. It comes because you resisted the truth that it never truly belonged to you. It was never you. It was a version, an adaptation, an attempt. And now, finally, you can consciously choose. You can choose to work with what truly moves your soul. You can cultivate relationships that are based on truth, not performance or dependency. You can say no without suffocating guilt. You can be alone without feeling empty. You can look in the mirror and see not a caricature, but a human being in process, in truth, in profound transformation. But this freedom demands a price: total responsibility. No one controls you anymore. No one dictates the rules anymore. What you do with this blank canvas is solely yours, and that is frightening because you can no longer hide behind expectations. You can no longer blame the system, others, or the past. Life is now entirely in your hands, and this is where true reconstruction begins. The eye of the hurricane, a call to action. What if you are right in the eye of the hurricane right now? What if while listening to this, you are experiencing that exact breaking point? The phase where everything that made sense has lost its color. Days pass, but you feel nothing. People talk, but their words pass through an empty body. You look to the future, and all you see is fog, or worse, absolute silence. You may have lost a loved one. You may have been betrayed. You may have suddenly realized that the life you built was not yours. It was borrowed, constructed on expectations you never had the courage to question. And now, without those external crutches, you feel like you are floating in the dark, aimless, unsupported, without identity. If that's the case, then this message is not just content for you. It is a mirror. It is an anchor. It is a direct call to action. Carl Jung would call this moment the dark night of the soul, a phase in which the psyche, out of pure survival necessity, dissolves the illusions that kept it asleep, not out of malice, but because it is time to wake up, to see, to be reborn. The pain you feel now is legitimate, deep, and real. But it is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of transition. It is like the snake shedding its skin. It no longer fits. It needs to crack. It needs to shed. And while that happens, there is confusion, fear, and disorientation. But there is also a possibility that has never existed before. The chance to start from scratch, but this time with truth. If you are in this moment, the most vital instruction is this: do not run away. Do not try to silence the emptiness with distraction. Do not try to hastily rebuild just to appear strong. Allow yourself to feel everything: the pain, the anger, the loneliness, the total loss. These feelings are your compasses. They are telling you, without ambiguity, that you can no longer live as before. Jung said that the unconscious speaks through symptoms, dreams, intuitions, and crises. When ignored for too long, it screams. The collapse you are experiencing may be the unconscious mind trying to save you, trying to return you to your true self. And yes, that is frightening, because discovering who you truly requires, letting go of all the versions of yourself that you painstakingly created to merely survive. But here is the secret: you do not need to have all the answers now. You just need to accept that the question has fundamentally changed. It is no longer about, how do I go back to being who I was? The question now is, who am I becoming, now that I am no longer that old version of myself? It is in this openness that the process of individuation truly begins. It is when you stop fighting to restore the past and start cultivating the present that the self begins to emerge. And with it, a new perspective, a new vision of life, of the world, and of yourself. You have made it this far, and that says everything about your inherent strength. While many turn their backs on their pain, you have stayed. While most seek shortcuts, distractions, or quick fixes, you have chosen to look within. This is perhaps the most courageous decision anyone can make in life. Jung believed that suffering has a purpose, and that moments of existential collapse are often the only catalyst capable of making space for the true birth of the self. Not that adapted, domesticated self, conditioned by others' expectations, but the essential, authentic, deep self, your ultimate truth. If you feel broken right now, do not try to glue the pieces back together. Observe them. Understand why they broke. Ask yourself why you allowed yourself to carry such fragile, false structures for so long. There is wisdom in the shards. There is truth in the ruins. The collapse was not the end. It was the initiation, and everything you need to move forward is already inside you, waiting to be recognized. You don't need to rush. This reconstruction is not a race, it is a profound calling. Now that the false has been destroyed, you have the space to build something real, something that no one can ever take away from you, something that does not depend on external validation, status, or applause. For the first time, you can choose to live in alignment with who you are and not with what others expect of you. The journey is just beginning. It will be long, challenging, and uncertain, but it will also be beautiful, profound, and wholly transformative, because now you know this profound truth. When everything crumbles, that is when the truth finally appears, and freedom is born.